In South Korea, one name stands above the rest.
That name is Samsung.
It is not only a company, it is a dynasty.
Samsung became so big that its story became part of Korea's story.
Its phones, chips, and screens reached homes around the world.
But behind the brand was something more powerful than products. A family that learned how to build, protect, and pass down control.
When the time for succession came, the whole country watched. Because this was never only about business. It was about power. And even now, Samsung stands under pressure from markets, workers, and the future. Samsung did not grow in one straight line. It spread quietly until its reach began to feel almost invisible.
Its influence moved far beyond phones and screens, into buildings, finance, insurance, and everyday Korean life.
That is how a company stops feeling like a brand and starts feeling like a system.
And at the center of that system stood one family, carrying ambition from one generation to the next.
The founder built the legend. The next generation inherited not only wealth, but pressure, expectation, and unfinished control.
Inside powerful families, succession is never quiet. It changes loyalty, strategy, and the future of the empire.
At Samsung, that transfer of power became one of the most watched corporate stories in all of Asia. Mergers, courtrooms, and public scrutiny turned a private family transition into a national question.
Because when one family holds so much influence, every decision begins to feel larger than business.
The deeper the story went, the clearer one truth became. Succession was never only a family matter. At Samsung, succession touched investors, courts, pension money, and the image of power in modern Korea. That is what happens when one corporate empire grows close to the center of a nation's identity. For the public, the legal battle was confusing. For the family, it was far more dangerous.
Because in dynasties, control is not just protected by law. It is protected by timing, silence, and loyalty.
Every court ruling, every headline, and every public appearance added new pressure to the next heir.
But pressure does not always break power. Sometimes, it teaches power how to hide itself better.
To many Koreans, Samsung still looked too important to fail and too important to ignore.
And in Samsung's case, those hopes were tied to one family, one name, and one future under constant watch.
Samsung was not the only giant in Korea, but it became the one most closely tied to national power and national pride. That made every crisis larger, every scandal louder, and every recovery more important to the public.
Some critics. Samsung's image had to survive not only business pressure, but also public judgment.
So the dynasty learned to speak in two languages: confidence in public, caution in private.
To investors, markets, and the media, stability became part of the message.
But inside the system, stability often meant protecting control before anything else.
That is why the story of Samsung never ends at products, profits, or market share.
It always returns to one deeper question: who truly holds the power when the public can only see the surface? And that question is what turned Samsung from a success story into a dynasty story.
Samsung survived where other giants fell, but survival came with a permanent need to prove strength.
The markets watched. The media watched. And the public kept watching too.
In a dynasty, pressure does not arrive once. It returns again and again, wearing different faces.
Sometimes it came as legal pressure, sometimes as market pressure, sometimes as questions about leadership itself.
But inside Samsung, every new pressure still touched the same old fear: losing control.
That is why every challenge felt larger than one company quarter or one bad headline.
It raised the deeper question of whether Samsung could still lead the future it helped create.
The future now meant chips, artificial intelligence, global competition, and a race that no giant could control alone. And while the world chased the next wave of technology, Samsung also faced pressure from workers and from inside its own walls.
So the dynasty remained standing, but no longer untouched, and no longer beyond doubt.
That is why Samsung still matters far beyond business, far beyond products, and far beyond profit. Because in modern Korea, Samsung became a symbol of ambition, discipline, power, and national scale. To some, it represented pride. To others, it represented how close private power could come to public life. That tension is what made Samsung more than a company story. It became a mirror of modern Korea itself.
Every headline, every legal battle, and every leadership question carried that same deeper meaning.
Could a dynasty built for control also adapt to a faster, harsher, more transparent world?
That question still follows Samsung today, even as the company keeps moving forward.
And that is the real story of power. It survives, but never without cost, and never without shadow.
Samsung remained standing, but the dynasty that protected it was always being watched.